Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. And first we'll talk about Vremivka tactical bridgehead. If you remember, during the previous few days we talked a lot about this territory. The Russians, as a result of offensive, managed to establish control over the southern part of the foothold. The Russians, as a result of assault, managed to establish control over this tree line, and also the Russians captured one building also in the southern direction. So obviously this is not like the greatest Russian offensive, but something that the Russians are paying attention to. Very likely the main Russian goal is to cut Staromayorskaya and Urozhaynaya, and for these purposes, obviously during the next few days they will continue offensive operation. And to ease this operation, the Russians decided to reduce the Ukrainian logistic possibilities. Today, the Russian sources published two videos of how they were bombing and attacking the main bridge between Velika Novoselovka and the Vremivka tactical bridgehead. On this video we can see the result of artillery strike, and a few seconds later we can see the results of the strike. We see that the damage, that the bridge was almost destroyed, and Ukrainians are no longer able to use this for redeployment of the forces from Velika Novoselovka further to the south. This is the same video from another angle, and also we see the result of strike, very heavy explosion, and the bridge was destroyed. So very likely during the next 48 hours we're going to receive more updates of further Russian attempts to attack from the south to the north in direction of Urozhaynaya, and very likely the Russians will start making attempts to attack Staromayorskaya from these directions as well. So something interesting is going to happen. Now we are moving further to Novomikhailivka. Just yesterday we were talking about the western part of Novomikhailivka, wondering when exactly the Ukrainians are planning to fall back, or when exactly the Russians are planning to establish complete control over the territory and to reach this line. And today some reliable sources like Syriac reported that a very bad situation for Ukraine army in Novomikhailivka. Russian army pushing from north and south forced Ukrainian troops to retreat from the southern trenches of the town towards Paraskovivka. So based on that report we can make a conclusion that Ukrainians abandoned their positions and moved to Paraskovivka. So for now Paraskovivka is the next defense belt of the armed forces of Ukraine on the direction. So let's wait for more updates and video geolocations and confirmation, and if this information confirmed, we will adjust the map and change the color of the territory. Now we are moving further to the north, to direction of Krasnohorivka. The situation is getting worse and worse for the Ukrainians. The thing is that despite the Russian attempts to attack on the south, the most important updates are coming from the north. Today we got a very interesting video from the area of the village by the name of Zaryana. As you can see, the territory, there is a flood in the area, and all the situation came after the Russians destroyed the dam to the north in the vicinity of Karlovka. So if we take a look at the map, we're gonna see that these areas, this Zaryana village is located on the main supply roads that goes from the mainlands towards Krasnohorivka. So let's add them on map. This is the first supply road that Ukrainians use to support their forces in the stronghold, and this is the second one. And both supply roads are laying on the line of a possible flood after the Karlovka dam destruction. So we can make a conclusion that due to the spring, due to the weather, due to the, let's say, significant number of water in the region, we can make a conclusion that this territory will be or could be flooded as a result of Russian let's say missile strike on the Karlovka dam. And this situation will lead to complete reduce of supply support of Ukrainian forces in Krasnohorivka. And this situation will lead obviously to intensifying of actions from the Russian side, and we should expect more attempts from the Russian side to attack the Ukrainian forces in Krasnohorivka from the southern part to the central part. Very interesting and smart tactics from the Russian side, to be honest. Now we are moving further to the north in direction of Yasnobrodovka. As you can see, we have significant number of geolocations and icons. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians conducted additional attempts to attack the road between Yasnobrodovka, Nitailova and Numanska. According to the Ukrainian sources, most of those attacks were repelled, but we have geolocations locations, confirming additional Russian progress. On this video, for example, we can see lots of Ukrainian FPV drone strikes against the offensive Russian armored vehicles, and one of the geolocation was, let's say, spotted in these points, so which confirms additional Russian progress. If you remember, during the previous few days, we were talking a lot that the sources reported that the Russians managed to enter Umanovsk, and today we start receiving these first confirmations, at least of attacks towards the village. For now, we don't have, let's say, confirmations whether the Russians managed to cut the road between Krasnohorivka and Unitailova, but anyway, if the Russians haven't managed to done this yesterday or yet, obviously they're going to do this in the very near future. Now we're moving further to the north in direction of Ocheretina, where the most important updates are coming from the territory. We have 3 icons, 3 reports from the area. The most important is that after the Ukrainians missed the Russian attack and probably and very likely were defeated during the first days of clashes for the foothold, the Ukrainians start sending additional reinforcement, forces by forces, soldiers by forces, another batch of armored vehicles after another, with the purpose to stabilize the situation in the area and not to allow the Russians to penetrate the defense belt and something like this. So those were reports from the Ukrainian side. The Russians are saying, and the, let's say, pro-Ukrainian mappers confirms that as a result of Russian offensive, they managed to establish control over the last, let's say, kilometers of the railways in front of Ocheretina. So this territory is under Russian control according to deep state pro-Ukrainian map, which is a very reliable resource, at least regarding the Russian progress. And as you can see, based on this progress, we can make a conclusion that the distance between Russian positions and the first buildings in this residential area is less than 300 kilometers. And this is a very important area because it's very easy to defend if the Russians are able to capture, and the most important, if we increase the numbers of days since the beginning of April, we're going to see significant number of artillery strikes exactly on this corner, exactly at this part of the residential area. So the Russians have already finished the artillery preparation, and very likely during the next 48-72 hours the Russians will conduct first attempts to attack this area with infantry, with the purpose to answer this part and to reach at least this line. If the Russians are able to do this, we can make a conclusion that entire defense line on this direction collapsed from the Ukrainian side. From the other side, we have additional videos of artillery bombings along these 3 lines, which also confirms that Ukrainians still control these 3 lines and that the Russians haven't managed or haven't started attempts to attack this territory yet, but probably they're going to start this very soon. Now we are moving further to the north in direction of Bahmut, where we also receive significant number of updates, mainly from pro-Ukrainian sources. The sources reported that the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish complete control over Bogdanovka, and these reports we received from pro-Ukrainian sources and pro-Ukrainian mappers. They are very reliable, but of course we will wait for additional reports from the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation. So according to deep state and according to pro-Ukrainian sources on the ground, maybe soldiers, maybe some volunteers, this territory is already under Russian control. The Russians currently are trying to dig in deeper and to prepare the foothold for further offensive operation on the hill in direction of Kalinovka, in direction of the main stronghold positions of 93rd Mechanized Brigades. Now we are moving to the southern flank, where we also receive significant number of interesting updates. The Russians continue advancing northwestern from Ivanovska, and once again, according to pro-Ukrainian deep state map, the Russians, as a result of offensive, managed to establish control over this part of the forest as well. So based on these, let's say, improvements, we can make a conclusion the Russians are about to cross the main supply road, or at least to establish the main supply road that goes through Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal, and the current distance between the edge Russian positions and canal itself is less than 1 kilometer, just 750 meters. So it's nothing. It's already the distance of short rifle fire. Furthermore, the Russians advanced and launched an offensive operation from Klishchevka to the west in direction of the main Ukrainian defense belt on this direction. And we are talking this network of fortifications that are still under Ukraine control. So the Russians launched an offensive, and as a result of attack, they managed to improve their positions. The video was published by the armed forces progress of Ukraine, so that's why we're not going to see significant progress of the Russians. We need to expect some updates and details from the Russian sources. The Russian videos probably will give us a better understanding of what the Russians managed to achieve. On this video, we can see artillery strikes on the Russian armed forces heading towards the Ukrainian position. So the attack was, let's say, implemented along this line. And obviously, the Russians are trying to half encircle Klishchiivka and also to reach Canal from this direction. Now we are moving further to Viimka. There are lots of interesting updates as well. A lot of mappers, pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian and neutral mappers, confirmed the Russian progress on the hill to the north of the current Russian positions, to the north of Berestove and to the south east of Viimka. And the sources reported that the Russians managed to establish control over this hill. This is already hill, first of all, and the second thing, if this information is correct, if this information will be confirmed during the day, we can make a conclusion that the Russians managed to establish control over the strongest, let's say, area, over the biggest fortification zone on this direction. And this is a perfect foothold on the hill that the Russians may use for further development of offensive operations to Spornaya from the southwest, and of course to Viimka from the south, let's say, east, and of course to Ivano-Darivka from the south. This is operational space that the Russians obviously will use in their favor. So we can say that if the Russians establish control over this network of fortifications, this is going to be the first step of the battle for Siversk. This is a very important stronghold area that the Russians can use as a small local base for further redeployment to the north. The Russians continue bombing and clearing the Bilogorovka landfill, but for now without any progress on the ground. South in Kupin's direction, we have just artillery strikes of armed forces of Ukraine on the Russian positions. We discussed that very likely the Ukrainians will try to counterattack. Maybe this is another, let's say, video of another artillery preparation before another, let's say, ground, let's say, Reko in combat or Reko in force operation. We'll be very stick close to this area, trying to understand what exactly is going to happen there. We have a few more updates, political updates. Let's discuss them. The European Union told Ukraine that they will not provide them air defense system. According to information we have, the European Union and NATO countries have tens of this type of weapon. Ukrainians need just 7, but nobody is going to give them to Ukraine. And also the Ukrainian officials, Ukrainian officers, Ukrainian generals are saying that if the situation continues develops the same way, the Ukrainians will be completely defeated on the eastern bank of Dnipro River, and they will be forced to fall back until Dnipro River and the front line might be established along the river. So the situation, as we can see, continue developing not in Ukrainian favor. From the other side, we received lots of updates from Macron. He continued intensifying the situation. He continued fighting with Russia, saying that France this year is going to supply Ukraine with additional 75 artillery system Caesars. They will also provide Ukraine additional missiles, cruise missiles. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.